Hey there, Malcontents. This here is the Malcontent, and welcome to Studio 2. We're going to jump right into it. I had actually planned to do a stream about an hour ago. Technology wasn't cooperating. We've got Studio 2, I think, sorted out. We have different framing, better shot, focus is set up. Hopefully you guys can hear me and there's no echo. I actually just want to confirm before I go diving into that. Can you all hear me? And is there no echo? I'm always terrified when we go under the hood on the software and the hardware because we've had issues in the past. However, that was just me going through a learning curve, and I think we're good. So I know it takes about 20 seconds for me to get the ask. Right now, I don't see comments blowing up going, "We can't hear you." So, wow, somebody's already just jumped onto the breaking news. Sounds good. We're diving right into it. Okay. So again, we were going to start at 9 o'clock tonight. If we had started, we wouldn't have actually had this. So earlier today, and that was going to be the lead story, Hope Hicks, who is a very, very close Trump advisor, who has been seen very, very close to Trump and his inner circle. They were on an aircraft together. They were in Marine One together. And a Marine One, if you've never been in a helicopter, whether that's military or civilian, you're squished in a helicopter. Even if you're in Marine One, you're squished in. There's no social distancing, and we know that they aren't big on wearing masks and not shaking hands and all that other stuff. So Hope Hicks tested positive, and word is that she is symptomatic. She is not an asymptomatic carrier. No word yet on the degree of symptoms. President Donald Trump, Melania, and several other people within that group have been tested, and it is breaking news. It has just come out like in the last 5 minutes. According to Donald Trump, from his Twitter feed, take it for what you want, he has tested positive for COVID, and Melania has tested positive for COVID. Now, Donald Trump is mid-70s. He has multiple comorbidities. He has a heart condition, and he's obese. There's no other way to put it. I'm not saying he don't make fun of it. He's obese. That's the clinical, his weight, that's clinical. It's a fact. And then there's questions about his health and an incident that may or may not have happened last year. If he had that additional incident, there's rumors he had a series of mini strokes, or he had a small stroke, and I've observed his gait, but I haven't seen his medical records, and so I'm not push polling, and I'm not going to sit up in here and say, but if he did, then that's an additional comorbidity issue, especially if he has an issue with clotting, because what we know about COVID at this point, about C disease at this point, is that it is an inflammatory illness, and it is an illness of the blood system. It is not a pulmonary illness akin to kind of like a pneumonia or a flu, despite the fact that if you have, say, a moderate case of it, a moderate symptomatic case, you have essentially symptoms that are flu-like on steroids, monstrous flu. This is huge for a couple of reasons. First of all, he can't campaign, right? He's not going to be able to do these live events. He can't campaign. If he starts to get significantly symptomatic, it is going to be very, very difficult for him to even say, from a remote standpoint, do campaigning. The next thing that becomes significant is that if he gets into a state of, say, where he has to go onto a ventilator, or he is hospitalized and gets delirium, because delirium is there was a chart that came out, and the only reason I know this is because my mother went through COVID she's 89, had a 5-week, 1 day between hospital and skilled nursing care, and she survived it. There was a chart that came out from 1 to 6. There's 1 to 6 phases that you can have, or types of COVID, or whatever word you want to use. If you start to get delirium, where you're just totally disoriented, that is stage 5. And then the stage 6 is if you've got delirium, and on top of that, you've got to go on a respirator. My mother got to stage 5, and she had terrifying degree of delirium. Terrifying. It was like she went from 72 hours of being a very, very lucid individual, probably with the intellect of, say, somebody who is maybe in their 60s or late 50s, to somebody that seemed like they had really severe Alzheimer's. If Donald Trump were to get to this particular state or have to go on a ventilator, you would have a temporary transfer of power vis-a-vis the 25th Amendment, and Mike Pence would be the acting president. That's not the case right now. I'm just going over what would happen. Now, let's just play the what if game. What if Mike Pence also gets sick? And what if Mike Pence ends up? Then Nancy Pelosi would become the acting president. If in the event they were to both die of COVID, then Nancy Pelosi would become president of the United States. That is the transfer of power. That is the way things have been set up. If Nancy Pelosi were to get sick or something were to happen to her, or she couldn't have the, or couldn't act as president, then it would go to the Secretary of State, and that would be Mike Pompeo. And I don't know who number 5 is. Someone can tell me in the comments, but that's what I know off the top of my head. We were just going to lead with Hope Hicks has COVID, and she's close, and it's just like, wow. So I don't know how the Chud,
cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
Now you know what a chud is, right? If you've heard the terms chud, there you go. It comes from this bad 1984 movie, and we're going to be playing that little chud clip a lot. But I don't know what the chuds are going to do, right? Because you have this whole group of people that simply deny that C disease is real. And let's not forget, there was a study that came out from Cornell University just today, irony, that the number one spreader of misinformation for C disease is President Donald Trump. And those are the people that follow him. So I don't know how his followers and then the subset, because not all followers of Donald Trump deny that C disease exists. Okay? Not all of them do. But for the ones that do, I don't know how they're going to rationalize this, right? It's a fake, it's deep state, it's, somebody poisoned him. It's like, it was Antifa. I don't know. I can't wait to see how they're going to rationalize it. Is it blowing up on Twitter? Let me know in the comments. And with that, we're actually going to go ahead and jump into our first commercial break.
To the side. Music has a power greater than words can really express. Songbird, sing a song to me. Let me know where I'm supposed to be. It's such a shame, yeah. Well, I was your TV girl. The EP is called Blue, and my website is classicelishamusic.com.
And we're back. We're going to be doing more of that. We are committed, and actually that'll be in the next break we'll get into. But I don't want to say the mission is changing. It's just our mission is going to get a little more focused. And in that, we're going to be doing a lot more of amplifying Black business, Black voices, Indigenous persons of color. We have a channel, we have an audience, and I can use my privilege to help those that don't have as big a platform and as big a voice. If, by the way, you are a Black, Indigenous, or person color artist, or you're a Black, Indigenous, person or color business owner, and you would like a 1-minute spot on one of these feeds, hit us up. You can go ahead and contact us through Facebook, or you can send an email to themalcontent@malcontentment.com, and we'll reach out to you and find out what you want to do. And we may create a 1-minute spot and put it on. And you're not just going to get one, you'll get more on that. So I see in the comments, people are, hey, did you see that? We just covered that yes, that Trump and Melania have C disease. And I see some people are going, what, C disease? Why do you say C disease? This is why I say C disease.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
See, the issue is that the Chuds mass report to Facebook these feet. Right now, there are trolls and bots, and they're reporting this feed right now because they want us off the air, because they can't stand the truth. They can't stand the truth. That's why they want it. That's why we call them chuds. So we were handed down a 3-day ban, and the only thing that we can conclude is this was very much during the time of C disease, and there must have been maybe a couple of keywords or something, or an order of words, and boom, 3-day ban. And so to prevent that, I just say C disease, because, we could be talking about cancer of some sort when we say C disease, or we could be talking about the and I know I let it slip a little, and as soon as it slipped out of my mouth, I was like, damn it. And it did slip on this feed. But anyway, that's why we do it. And we know from the reports, because that's how they operate. That's because they don't like the truth. With that, let's move on to the next story that I want to cover tonight. The ACLU today filed an additional contempt hearing, or contempt filing. They filed contempt of court against the city of Seattle in federal court and the police department, specifically for incidents that have happened on August 26th, September 7th, September 22nd, and September 23rd. All but one of those dates is certainly etched in my brain because we were out in the field doing our thing on all but one of those dates. August 26th is the Summer Taylor memorial that was done outside of the state police office, or we would say, where I come from, the East Coast, the state police barracks, although they're really not barracks, and even there, they're not barracks anymore, but that's what they call them. But the state police office or state police station located in Seattle, that devolved into a complete shit show. Hey, if CNN can say it, I can say it too, because we're not even cable. It devolved into a total shit show. And the Seattle police was incredibly aggressive. They pepper sprayed Omari multiple times, pushed him down on the ground. Christina D had her, and I'm just saying what happened. Christina D had her equipment torn out of her hand and smashed. That was live and on camera. When that happened, there were arrests of people just because they couldn't run fast enough. There were, I believe, windows smashed in the car brigade. I believe there were tires slashed in that one, and a bunch of chemical munitions were used. And it was literally for absolutely no reason. Well, we're rioters. No. This was literally a candlelight vigil for Summer Taylor. It was disgusting what happened. You can go to speculation on Twitter. If you want to watch the video that he had said, you're probably going to have to do some searching for that. And I'm presuming actually spec goes by he, him. I'm presuming. And if not, no disrespect. 7th, that was the Spog March to, that was the Spog March on Labor Day. And, I just got my badge back. I actually got it back on Friday, but last Friday, but I finally got a chance to put the pictures up yesterday. Hey, I got this back. Literally got it back when I was driving back. Thanks to the National Lawyers Guild for helping me out. ACLU hooked me up with the National Lawyers Guild. National Lawyers Guild was like, don't deal with it. We'll take care of it. They took care of it. It was not a very, very easy process, because initially it was like, oh, no, it's not released. You got to sign all this paperwork. And anyway, as far as I'm concerned, that's passed. But we also know a lot of other stuff that happened that we caught on camera. They did a forced run of people for over 2 miles. People that, again, generally couldn't keep up or fell down or couldn't stop, or had to stop because of medical care. Those people were arrested. And this included people that were peaceful protesters. There were elderly people there. Apparently, a 5-year-old was you shouldn't take up. That wasn't the intent of the march. There was a 5-year-old apparently that got pepper sprayed. We actually, not the pepper spray incident, but we do have the pictures of that 5-year-old marching. And I think it is actually on camera with me talking to them at the beginning, where I was telling them, hey, just make sure you stay kind of, not all the way in the back, but really close to the far back of what's going on. They used a ridiculous amount of chemical rounds, OC, and apparently, and when I read this, it made sense because if you go in the video, that we shot on the 7th, there's this one moment where I really start cursing and swearing, and I'm just like, damn, that hurt. And what I thought was, because a flashbang had gone off pretty close to me, that a part of that flashbang had flipped up and essentially hit me in the hand, kind of right here on the little fleshy part of where the thumb and the connects to the rest of the hand. And no, that's probably not what happened. I was probably hit with a sponge tip round, less lethal rubber bullet, whatever you would like to call it. And that's probably what happened. I actually was not aware that they were firing a crap ton of less lethal rounds there, but apparently they were. If anything would have hit, say, on the helmet, especially as a distance, or certainly on the padding and body armor I was wearing, I probably wouldn't have known it. But anything that would hit kind of the soft, exposed, fleshy parts of me probably would. I'm only telling this because it's like I was there and I saw just this ridiculous, the country music and the 100 officers, and they came out and like literally nobody did. And somebody, like we have it, somebody threw a bag of trash over the fence. That's it. There's a lot of questions about that dude and all. And we were actually going to make a video because one of the things that we discovered in going through and looking through all the content is that we had a lot of video of alleged Molotov cocktail guy. Minutes and minutes and minutes of video of him, both before, during, and after. And I was asked to let it go. So that's it. But still a lot of questions about, like, who was that dude and what was their motivation and what was going on with that. September 22nd, September 23rd. September 23rd is this is the Breonna Taylor March, which goes into the 24th. And that, it's interesting because when I read the ACLU filing, there are people who have been to multiple protests. And this is one of the things I agreed, that this was the most intense and chaotic scene that they had ever experienced. That was one person said in their statement, in this engagement with the Seattle Police Department. And I have to totally agree. It is kind of the first time that I've been in Seattle, and it was almost, it wasn't a Portland experience. Actually, I take it back. It really wasn't a Portland experience. I mean, it was just coming at 360 degrees, and it was really unclear, which way did you want, you're telling us to disperse. Well, which way do you want us to disperse? And then they do this announcement, right? This is an law regardless of reason. And the federal court filing is crystal clear. If you are a legal observer, if you're a designated medic, if you are press and media, you do not have to listen to the dispersal order. Period of end of story. It is in the federal court filing. That was on August 10th. You're not press, you're just an a-hole with a camera.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
I would like to remind you, Chud, that the union president said that I'm press. The press in the city said that I'm press and refer to me as a journalist. And I've actually written stories for publications. And I was a travel writer for 5 years. And I know that some of the Chuds, when all of this broke out, kind of dug down deep. And, all that is true. So I don't know what to tell you at this point. Also, documentarian, and anyway, all around nice. He's a mensch. He's such a face. He's a mensch. The Breonna Taylor march just also devolved into a complete crap show. There was very, very peaceful part of the march. And then when you went up, we went up to Capitol Hill, a different group of people. Some other people came up in there. But it really had kind of this June 2nd first. And I know, like, people, why is everybody wearing black? It's like, because it's pouring, pissing rain in Seattle and everybody owns a black raincoat. See, let me explain to you. One of the things here, people live in Seattle, right? Explain this to the national audience in the comments, right? We take wearing black when it's raining in the fall, in the wintertime here, to a whole new level. It is unlike any city you have ever been in. We have so many Johnny Invisible cyclists and Johnny Invisible pedestrians on any day for the 20 years that I've lived here, dressed out in the pouring rain and dark in black. Because if you shop at most Seattle stores, even like say you go to a Nordstrom, when I was still working in corporate America, I bought a lot of my clothes actually when I would go to New York, because you go say to Nordstrom or Nordstrom Rack. It's not like I shop at Nordstrom here all the time, but you like go to Nordstrom Rack, and everything is kind of like shades of gray and navy blue and white. And there might be some red. I'm talking men's clothes. You go to that same store in New York City, and they'll have the exact same brands, but they'll have them all these different colors that you have here. It's just, I don't know. We're like dark, somber people here. And that's why they were all wearing black, because it was flipping raining. And you go back and look in the video, you could see it was pissing rain. And the other thing is not everybody there was wearing black. We have video. If you go back in the stream, there's a SWAT officer who pointed, a 40 millimeter firing some kind of projectile thing right at my friggin' head. And it's on the video and can't be 20 feet away. And he'd have killed me. He'd have flat out killed me if he had pulled the trigger, because the impact would have just completely just destroyed me. That's what I know that I witnessed. I saw a person have their window smashed and dragged out of a car and arrested, and we videoed most of that for like being in an intersection. I don't even know if that person was even involved in the march. We just came up and, because there were people trying to drive away. And that was the other thing that's in that lawsuit. And the 22nd and the 23rd, there are people who were just trying to get into their cars. I saw people going, that's my car right there. Like literally telling police, that's my car right there. I just want to get in my car and drive. And they're being basically told that and being just pushed along. And again, they chased them up and down all through Capitol Hill. That's the first day. Admittedly, I had streamed for 6 hours. That's the first time I was like, wow, I am gassed. I am totally gassed. That was a cardio workout from hell that night. ACLU is suing all of that, and we expect that there will be a pretty quick decision from the federal court. They're found in contempt. Don't know what that's going to mean. Anyway, that's the third story. And now, a word from the Malcontent Tango.
The Malcontent Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press, and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
And we're back. That leads us to the third story, Boeing. Today, Boeing announced that they are this is more of a local story, but it does have national impact. Today, Boeing announced that they are going to be consolidating all 787 production in South Carolina. This basically spells the end to aircraft manufacturing by Boeing in Everett, Washington. That's not true. It really is. If anybody's been following this, like really following this, the wheels for this started almost 20 years ago. And then it accelerated when they had this move, when they opened the facility in South Carolina. This is all Jay Inslee's fault. No, it's not. And I'm no fan of Jay Inslee. But anybody that's going, it's all Jay Inslee's fault, got rocks in their head. They are a chud.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
All right. So what's the backstory on this? The backstory is that Boeing went to the state of Washington and said, you know what? Traffic here sucks, which it did at the time. It's actually not bad now, but that's because of C disease. Traffic here sucks. Cost of living here is expensive, and it wasn't anywhere where it is now today. It's gotten a lot worse. Your tax system is somewhat regressive. It's regressive for people and for small business. It's not regressive for big corporations. And there's a lot of other companies that would love it if we left. And so we want some tax breaks from you. And so the state of Washington put together the largest tax break package that a state has put together in U.S. history. And that happened 16 years ago. And nobody has come up with a bigger package. Boeing got almost $9 billion with a B in tax breaks. Now, dear Washington state taxpayers, let's remember, particularly if you're a homeowner, remember when all our property taxes went up over a couple of years of like 30, 40, some people 50%, and it caused this wave of gentrification. It pushed elderly out of the area. It pushed people in fixed incomes out of homes that they had owned for 20 or 30 years. Do you remember when this happened? Yes, this is because the state had underfunded the education system, was found to be in contempt of this. The state was actually essentially being fining itself through a federal court decision, and was forced to properly fund our schools. To the tune of, no, not $9 billion, not 8 point, it's 8.7 the Boeing got if you want to get pedantic, but to the tune of about $4 billion. Now, if Boeing didn't get those tax breaks, we wouldn't have been left holding the bag on our property taxes going up like it did, which then, even if you don't pay property tax, if you rent, you still pay property tax because you're paying it by proxy. And this was one of the biggest things that happened to cause gentrification and the spiraling cost of home ownership or being a renter all throughout the state of Washington. And we, the people, ended up holding the bag for the tax breaks that Boeing got. Wait, it gets worse. In 2014, I believe, the Boeing CEO at the time, who was 65 years old, was asked the question and said, are you going to retire? And his response was no, because the heart of Boeing is still beating and the workers are still cowering. That is a direct quote from the CEO of Boeing. Quote unquote. You can go look it up. He's no longer the CEO, but he was the CEO at the time in 2014. And this quote was made after they had made record profits and after when they had opened the South Carolina plant and threatened to move everything to South Carolina. The union made huge concessions on pay, on tenure, on new employees and how they're treated and benefits, and the retirement funds. They made huge freaking concessions. They bent over backwards. And then we had C disease and the airline industries in collapse. And by the way, this ties into what's happened in the White House, because once again, Republicans and Democrats are just doing this to both of us. It's both parties. You can blame the Democrats and the Republicans on this one. They can't get together to figure out a package to continue to prop up the economy. And the economy is artificially propped up. And so this is the other knee to the groin that's kind of happening to the Trump administration tonight. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands, maybe tens of thousands of aircraft workers are being furloughed. They are being furloughed this week because the money has run out and the airlines are not getting any more money. Well, people are still flying. People are flying at about 20 to 25% of the volume that they were flying before. And guess what corporate America's figured out? Bob doesn't have to get on a jet airplane to do a friggin' business deal. Bob can do it from Zoom, and he can do it just as well. And so this is a fundamental shift. And then let's tie into the other thing. Remember those vaccines we were promised by by November? Well, first of all, we know that either A, dear leader and his wife never got the vaccine if they're in trial, or they don't work if they got them, or they don't have C disease and he's just going to come out and go, see, I didn't get sick. It's not a big deal. I think there's a slim possibility of that. But I find that really improbable because, again, it just guts his ability to campaign. He literally cannot campaign the way that he wants to campaign now for the next 10 to 14 days. It guts it. So I find it a little hard to believe he's making it up. And I find it hard to believe he's looking for the sympathy vote because I don't see him getting the sympathy. Oh, he's sick. I have to vote for him now. I don't see that happening. So, and all of that ties together though. So now let's fast forward to today in this announcement. 787 line is gone. So what else do they build up in Boeing? Up at Boeing in Everett, Washington. They build 747, but that death of the 747 has been announced, and the last ones are going to roll off the assembly line around 2022, 2023. And if C disease continues to drag out, it is possible that those committed orders will start to continue to trickle down, and that production could end even sooner. Then what do you have left? You have the 767 and the 777. Now, the 767 is also winding down. Basically, they're fulfilling some final orders on the 767, and there's this tanker deal with the U.S. military based on the 767, which is on again, off again, on again, off again. And honestly, I believe it is still on at this point, because I remember originally that we were going to get our military tankers from a foreign country, and people were like, holy crap, we can't even build friggin' aerial refueling tankers to replace the KC-135s, which were based on 707s that were built in the, in the 60s that are still flying today. You got to be kidding me. And so that leaves the 777. But the 777 is a long-haul, wide-body aircraft designed for international travel. And there's not a lot of business for that. And there's probably not going to be a lot of business for that for a while. And so the airlines aren't going to be buying that. Now, here's the other thing. This spring, the tax breaks, this $8.7 billion tax package, it went away. And Boeing, it's Jay Inslee's fault. That's why it went away.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
No, it's not Jay Inslee's fault, because Boeing went to Jay Inslee and the Senate of the state of Washington and said, make this go away, because Boeing was looking at massive tariffs being put on them by the EU and the WTO, because it was discovered, or concluded would be the better word, that these $8.7 billion in tax breaks that Boeing got in the first place were illegal. They should have never got them. Now, does this mean that Boeing's woes are gone and yay for South Carolina? No. South Carolina apparently doesn't have a tax package there that crosses this line of illegal incentives as far as global trade is concerned, but the Kansas plant does. And this will be devastating also if Boeing goes, well, we're leaving Kansas too, because there's even less opportunity there. So how many jobs were up in Everett? 30,000. 30,000 people before C disease were putting together aircraft, and there were orders as far as the eye could see there. They've already let 10,000 go. The full numbers aren't who they're going to let go, aren't out. But here's the reality. We're probably 5 years away from no more aircraft manufacturing at Everett, or a very, very token amount of aircraft manufacturing in Everett. This is devastating for South Snohomish County. This is devastating for the city of Everett. This is devastating for Marysville. Because basically Marysville, it's a bedroom community for Seattle, or you work at the Toledo Casino, or you're working for Boeing, or maybe you're working for Providence Hospital System, possibly the Naval Base, and that's it. That's really it. Otherwise, you own a small business, but then those small businesses are dependent upon Boeing and all, Boeing in these Boeing jobs. And that's the other thing. It's not just the 30,000 jobs. Each one of those Boeing workers, by the virtue of them pulling this out when they go to work, because remember, they're at a factory. They're not work from home, right? They're putting together planes. So they're still eating lunch somewhere. They're still buying a coffee on the way there, or if they're on the third shift, buying coffee on the way home, right? They're yanking this out at local businesses. By virtue of that, there's probably about 5 jobs tied to each one of those Boeing workers. You're talking 150,000 jobs are going to be lost in South Snohomish County over the next 5 years. This is economically devastating. And it's not great news, along with all of the other layoffs that are coming, because a bunch of financial aid that was going to corporate America, not triple P, not payroll protection, not UAP, not the small business sentence. Now, basically, the corporate money is drying up, and business isn't where it should be. And this gets into kind of this K-shaped recovery. And so if you were, say, in the top 20% or the top 10%, particularly if you're an office worker, and particularly in the IT and the technology spaces, you're like, what? terrible recession? What borderline depression? If you're in a service job, you're like, or if you're in video production, if you're in the biz, you're like, what am I going to do? And this is just colossally horrible. And who are the most vulnerable in there? Well, of course, it is Black, Indigenous people of color, because there is inherent bias when they go to look for work. There is, because of the institutional racism that's set them in the system, they typically, despite going through the same education, when you go on aptitude tests, they don't test as well in aptitude because the way the system has been set up and stacked against them. There is a person that I work with, and they use this analogy. You go to Baskin Robbins, there's 31 flavors of ice cream. You go and buy ice cream, and then you go home and you don't put it in the freezer. That's not ice cream's fault. That's your fault, because you didn't put ice cream in an environment where the ice cream can thrive. Now, likewise, if you get a Hot Pocket and you bring that home and you just take it out of the freezer and try to eat it, you can't, because you didn't put the Hot Pocket in the environment that it can thrive. Right? One size does not fit all. And the gradients actually aren't that hard when we talk about the human race. It's an extreme example. But don't blame ice cream for melting on the kitchen counter when you didn't put ice cream in the freezer. Ice cream was set up to fail. That's why it melted. Not because ice cream is weaker or lesser or bad or lazy. It's not good. Anyway, with that, let's go to your questions and comments. This is going a lot better than the last show, I'll tell you that, so far. Questions and comments. Yes, Ian, we know that was the first part. I'm just seeing this thing. Trump had, yes, that was the first, that's what we led with. Yes, I'm not saying it to be snarky. I'm not, but yes. And it's not, this is a major game changer. Because this is really going to impact his ability to campaign. If he gets symptomatic, even if he has, say, a moderate case symptomatic, because anybody who's had C disease and becomes symptomatic can tell you it's a flippin' nightmare on how bad it makes you feel. And it's going to be very, very hard for him to function. And there's not going to be like, hey, doc, just give me a B12 shot in the ass in a way that I'm going to go here and I'm going to feel better. That's not the case. He has multiple comorbidities. He's over, it's like he has multiple comorbidities. He's over 50. He's in a high stress role. There is questions on did he or didn't he have a stroke or some kind of other, right? Because then if he did, because it's an inflammatory illness and it's a blood illness, it is not a pulmonary illness. This is what we've learned. There is one thing, and this is what I learned from my mother having C disease, and I know we're kind of jumping around, but I'm kind of getting into your comments now. We know a lot better on how to treat C disease than we did before. Here's the bottom line. Let's not forget, and let's call it for what it is. Donald Trump stood in front of the country at that dumpster fire of a debate. And, he said, actually not looking to the camera, but looking to the side over at Joe. And I got into, what my thoughts on that were. And it was like, I get it. He's looking at Joe, but for a reality TV guy, blah, 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 he should have really been eyes on the camera because that's what the audience is watching. Joe Biden doesn't care if he's looking at him or not. And Joe constantly kept his face on the camera. And there are benefits to that. And you can go back to the 1960 debate of Nixon and Kennedy. And this was some of the Nixonian mistakes that were made there. But he said, not exactly looking into the camera, I've had plenty of rallies in person and there's been no consequences to it. It's been perfectly fine. Now, let's not forget that Herman Cain died. And let's not forget that officials in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which certainly is not a hotbed of democratic thought, all came out and said, because you had this rally of 6,200 people, we've had a massive spike in cases of C disease in the city, and we can directly tie it right back to your rally. We'll ignore all of that. But it's like impossible to ignore it because clearly there are now consequences and there are direct consequences. And, if he has a severe case, we could be having conversations about the 25th Amendment in, another 7 to 10 days. If he kind of starts spiraling into, I talked about this earlier, it's kind of like 6 subtypes. There's a medical group that kind of goes based on your initial symptoms that you get. You could have a subtype 1 through 6. If he gets to 5 or 6, or even if he kind of gets like into 4, because 4 you get a little bit of delirium, but 5 you get like you're off your rocker delirium. You don't even know which way is up. And if he gets to that point, we could be looking at President Mike Pence, not President Mike Pence full time, but President Mike Pence stepping in. At this point, I would presume he's still the president, still making decisions, still holds the nuclear football. That's kind of the symbolic transfer of power. Is the nuclear football if the nuclear football is handed over, then you kind of have the keys to the candy store. Rest well knowing that he's sleeping, resting his head on that nuclear pillow, on that nuclear football there. Reason is that a piece of our future to come is I'm not sure what that means. Yeah, Emily, that's exactly what I mean by his comorbidities, right? He's overweight. We know he has a heart condition. Look, love him, hate him, whatever. It's a stressful job, right? Anybody who's been president of the United States, look what it did to George W. Bush. Look how young he looked when look what it did to Barack Obama. Look what it did to Bill Clinton. And actually in the 4 years, look what it's done to Donald Trump. It is an incredibly stressful job. And so all of that kind of piles onto things. And the other thing is that I don't think Donald Trump's going to be the kind of guy that's going to play along and listen to his doctors on, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. I think, and then the other question is, because, he shakes hands and is this going to be a super spreader event? Are we going to have essentially chaos within the presidential cabinet in another 10 to 14 days with multiple people who are ill? Because most people in the cabinet, just by virtue of being in those positions of power in the government, they're not 35 or 40 years old. Most of these people are in their 50s, in their 60s, and a number of these people have multiple comorbidities, right? They're not in the best shape because of the stress of the job and the time that it takes for them to work on it. And hello, Emily. I wasn't going to read that, but for now, I'm not sure what that is. I'm just reading your comments. We're trying to. Well, Brenda, I'm seeing your thing about the flyer. I haven't seen the flyer, but if you were paying attention at the debate, I mean, that's basically it, right? Joe Biden's a leftist, and Joe Biden basically I'm middle of the road centrist, man. I'm not a leftist. And Donald Trump, you just lost the radical left. The radical left wasn't going to vote for him anyway. And I'm not saying the radical left derogatory. I'm just echoing Donald Trump's words. So if you identify yourself as the radical left, don't be like, you just insulted me. No, I didn't. I'm just echoing his words that he said. They weren't going to vote for him anyway. There's probably a subset that are going to vote for him, because basically what you're looking at is, somebody put this beautifully. I read this maybe 24 hours ago. I'm going to mangle it a little bit. But basically what I had read was, it comes down for some people, the fundamental choice of that, yes, at the end of the day, the Democrat and the Republican Party really don't give a crap about Black Lives Matter, equality, or any of this. They are generally, you can't say that it's two sides of the same coin, but it really comes down to if you sit this out, or particularly if you're in one of the critical swing states and you're like, you're literally kind of voting for the end of democracy. And I'll get into that in a minute. Or 4 years of a guy that maybe we can put our thumb down on hard and get some change going on. And let's not forget, Joe Biden's made it pretty clear he's not interested in this job for 8 years. Joe Biden's made it pretty clear that, look, I'm coming to this party because we just need somebody. We need somebody other than what we've got. And here's the other thing. Omari was talking about this, and Omari was, this was kind of flying in the comments. If you're a woman, this is much more critical for most women than it is for men, because you're talking about basic women equality here. You're talking about potentially Roe v. Wade and a woman's rights to choose. Is literally hanging in the balance. If you have pre-existing medical conditions, we did fact checking on this, right? If you end ACA up to 129, that was the number according to the government source. We have the link if you go back to our live cast and fact checking of the debate. We have it up there. 129 million Americans have pre-existing conditions. You could have 129 million Americans who now will lose their coverage if they change jobs or are laid off or furloughed. Or if they're on a private plan, they're now stuck on that private plan and the price could be jacked up to whatever it is. And then if they go to move to another one, they're like, well, we're not going to cover you for that pre-existing condition. Imagine if you're a diabetes patient and how much insulin costs. And by the way, we also fact-checked his claim that insulin is now as cheap as water, and it's not even friggin' close. 10 milliliters of insulin is somewhere between $93 to $183 in the United States, depending on the brand and who you buy it from and where you buy it from, and 10 milliliters. So yeah, 10 milliliters of water is not $93 because we're not living in Mad Max Fury Road yet. Talk to me in about 18 months.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
I love that button. You guys are probably already tired of that button, but I love that button. We'll be doing a little bit, adding a couple of more, because I have a few more buttons on here. I have a few more empty buttons. Anyway, let's see if we have any more of your comments here or questions. I think that's it for your questions and comments and stuff. It's actually a pretty small audience tonight, which I get. It's late, and it's particularly late on the East Coast where everybody's probably gone to bed a long time ago. Anyway, I think we have Studio 2 kind of dialed in now. I like how this is. The camera stayed in focus. Everyone says the sound is good. I can see the sound meters, and I'm hitting right at the 0 dB basically through all the conversation. This thing worked through the whole thing. We didn't lose a camera. So first broadcast, if you missed it, my little clicker thing stopped working. We actually had a camera die. And then because my clicker thing worked, I wasn't able to hit the technical difficulties button. I'll show you what that looks like just for a second. Wasn't able to hit the technical difficulties button, or because this didn't work. So then I'm like, just kind of like, damn it. And I had to go over, and then it would play for 2 seconds, then it wouldn't play. And I think we have kind of it all sorted out. Going to be streaming live out in the real world, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we're going to be streaming a lot this weekend because there is a ton that is going on. There is the Black Indigenous Coalition March at 5 o'clock. There is the, I'm not saying anything you can't go on the internet and go find yourself. There is Direct Action, ENDD, that is planned on Saturday. Again, he's got secret. I read your friggin' commentary on friggin' Reddit.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
They actually work with me, and I have access to that because I don't ask stupid questions like, what is your friggin' plan, and where are we going on, and what are you guys going to be doing? I don't want to know. It gives me plausible deniability, and the second thing is where I don't want to know is that it just breaks journalistic integrity if I know what the flippin' plan is. And so they don't tell me, and I don't know. They trust me because I operate in a trustworthy way. I'm sorry that is so hard for chuds to grasp. And then there is the ICE protest in Tacoma that is happening on Sunday. And I right now, any excuse to go to Tacoma because, one, they don't get a lot of streamer love. And the second thing is in Tacoma, like my favorite fish market in all of Puget Sound, you guys know I'm into food. If people have watched the streams, you know I'm into food. Northern Fish Market. It's actually in the Ruston. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Part of the city. It's as if you're driving out to Point Defiance. Oh my God, it's just such an amazing fish market. And I actually get to cook a piece of salmon from there tomorrow, which I'm very excited to do. But that's our last piece of fish from there. And so I actually look for excuses at this point to get down because traffic's not bad. So I look for excuses to get down there. And always hit that fish market when I do. So if you're ever down in the South Sound in the Tacoma area, Northern Fish Market, damn. And then the other thing, if you like, you don't want to, they cook. They have stuff there that they cook, and damn, it's flipping their chowder. I come from the East Coast. I come, outside of Boston. Their chowder, legit. And with that, Malcontents, we're going to go ahead and call it a night. I'm the Malcontent. Out.